Is Cornish nationalism part of a broader strategy of tension? The Cold War term strategy of tension precisely describes how a deliberate cultivation of fear, division and polarisation maintains strict political control over entire populations. Nowhere was that logic more clearly institutionalised than in Operation Gladio, the clandestine stay-behind network exposed in Western Europe during the early 1990s. The revelations of Gladio, examined in detail by the European Parliament in 1990 and subsequent Italian parliamentary inquiries, demonstrated that NATO-linked structures funded and trained secret paramilitary cells that engaged in manipulation of political life, propaganda, and acts of terrorism designed to discredit left-wing organisations. The Gladio inquiries confirmed that such networks were real, coordinated through the Clandestine Planning Committee under NATO auspices, and operated without meaningful democratic oversight. The absence of accountability remains instructive. If the alliance could sustain covert political operations for decades throughout Western Europe, which included false flag terror attacks that killed hundreds of citizens, why would anyone, conservative or liberal, not believe that such groups would be capable of carrying out similar operations today? Furthermore, while researching my thesis, I had the feeling that something about the push for Cornish nationalism was off, but I couldn't quite articulate why I felt like that. Most people I have met who advocate for an independent Cornwall are sincere in their beliefs. However, I detect underlying inconsistencies about what such a nationalist project entails. When I first read The Last of the Celts, 2006, by Marcus Tanner, I recall being delighted by its seemingly objective view of Cornish life, which resonated with my own politically naive rural upbringing. It presented the Cornish nationalist movement as well-meaning, but misguided in its desire for an independent Cornish nation. The Last of the Celts seemed at odds with Tanner's earlier work in service of NATO, in which he had written of how a cultural revival of Illyrianism and Croatian independence could serve as a vehicle for anti-communist and pro-NATO state projects. As a more conservative commentator, I wonder why he hadn't presented Cornish independence in a more positive light. In 2008, Peter Tatchell weighed in with a Guardian article on Cornish devolution, which, perhaps unintentionally, fits within Tanner's Illyrian pattern. Framing Cornwall's cultural revival, its language, economic neglect, and sense of distinctiveness as grounds for autonomy, Tatchell advanced a civic, human rights vocabulary of recognition. While ostensibly being anti-NATO, I can't help noticing that Tatchell often highlights the human rights abuses of NATO's enemies and therefore subtly reinforces NATO soft power. It is still unclear to me what is meant by the term Cornish nationalism. Ask a Cornish nationalist what they mean by Cornish nationalism, and you will get answers that range from the establishment of a homeland for a protected ethnic minority to a collection of qualities that anyone who wishes to can simply adopt. Which is it? Over the course of my research, I've met conservative people who welcome foreign investment to support their status as an ethnic minority, and left-wing people who don't want to talk about international class solidarity but would rather work on their spiritual connection to the land. I guess Cornish nationalism is shorthand for a political movement devoid of any principles. It's essentially whatever you want it to be. While I cannot prove any Gladio-like covert operation to cultivate this confusion, Cornish nationalism does appear to me to be a convenient way to divert attention away from legitimate critiques of economic disenfranchisement. Such covert operations in the UK are not new. There is plenty of evidence of state infiltration and manipulation of political movements, and I encourage readers to follow the ongoing Spy Cops inquiry, which documents the shocking lengths to which clandestine state actors will go to infiltrate and manipulate any grassroots political group vaguely critical of state power. There are three main reasons why I think Cornish nationalism exhibits qualities akin to a strategy of tension. 1. Fragmentation of class solidarity. In the 1970s and 1980s, Gladio sought to prevent left-wing unity through the creation of internal enemies. Today, the divisions are stoked through the cultivation of increasing identities. As such, Cornish, Welsh or Scottish nationalisms relocalise political energy, dividing workers who share economic conditions into segregated cultural blocks. 2. Cultural channels of influence. Where Gladio used paramilitaries, the contemporary state and its allies use funding streams. NATO's Science for Peace and Security programme, EU cultural grants and UK regional resilience projects engage universities, NGOs and local councils. These initiatives are transparent and lawful, yet they replicate the same institutional geometry, money and legitimacy flowing from transnational power centres into local intermediaries that serve a global neoliberal politic. 3. Manufactured instability and managed resolution. A mild level of cultural tension can be politically useful. It sustains the narrative of diversity and democratic pluralism while justifying ongoing engagement by central authorities and security institutions. Celtic nationalism's re-emergence within neoliberal Britain functions as both instrument and symptom of capitalist crisis. Deindustrialisation and austerity have hollowed out working class organisation. Into that void steps cultural revivalism, a politics that offers recognition without redistribution. The Cornish worker, stripped of collective power, finds symbolic compensation in a flag and a revived language. Antonio Gramsci's notion of passive revolution is instructive here. The ruling order absorbs elements of popular culture to prevent revolutionary rupture. Cornwall's identity politics, when funded and validated by state and supranational agencies, represents precisely this absorption. It channels anger into manageable narratives of heritage, tourism and local governments, harmless to capital and convenient to the geopolitical architecture that sustains it. To invoke Gladio is not to allege bombs beneath Bodmin Moor. It is to recognise that the form of power, its reliance on fragmentation, on fear, on the management of identity, has endured even as its methods have evolved. What has changed is the medium, from covert armies to cultural partnerships, from false flag violence to discourse management. The strategy of tension has been civilised, bureaucratised, normalised. Cornish nationalism, like its Celtic counterparts, is sincere, created and rooted in genuine grievance. Yet it also illustrates how culture can become an instrument of governance. The historical record of Operation Gladio reveals the capacity of NATO and its affiliates to shape domestic political environments in service of maintaining economic control. The current celebration of Celtic identity performs a similar ideological function. It fragments working class unity, redirects discontent into heritage and sustains the hegemony of the transatlantic order. As always, Miath Car. Links to the original blog post and all of the references and articles cited can be found in the information below this video. Thank you very much.